Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, your favorite place to get education and advocacy for all things equine-assisted services. And today I have a guest, Dr. Erin Cardea, and she is an advanced certified therapeutic riding instructor, and she is also in partnership with university. So I'm going to let her give you her spiel so we can meet her and get to know her. Welcome, Erin.
Great. Hi, Katie. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on this podcast. And I'll just say that many, many years ago, right out of college when I graduated, I ended up in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm familiar with Hetra and happy to share with you all this morning.
Awesome. Not a small world. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you the very condensed version of how I got to where I am. So I am currently the Dean of Equestrian Studies at William Woods University, and that's in Fulton, Missouri. And it's been a lifelong journey. I'll say through my youth, I was into horses a lot. It was sort of that barn rat phase in the 90s where you couldn't afford to pay for it. So you clean stalls all weekend and then get to ride for a couple of hours. And that was great. So I ended up going to school at William Woods for my undergraduate. And I attended here and got my bachelor's of science in equestrian science. And then afterwards ended up in Nebraska. I was there for just about 10 years. Here, there, Omaha, mostly. I had my own barn, Orion Row Stables for a few years, mostly hunter jumper circuit. And then I took some opportunities and I went back to the show circuit and worked on that for a while and decided that wasn't really where my calling was. I really love teaching. And I took a job overseas, kind of randomly in Saudi Arabia for a few years. Yeah. And it was a teaching job. It was directing a riding program for expatriates of a residential compound. So really cool job. While I was there, I worked on master's degrees because I knew eventually I wanted to be in higher education. I had such a great experience at William Woods as a student, and it was sort of my dream to get back here. So you need a master's degree to teach a bachelor's level. I got my master's in equine science at the University of Edinburgh, which is a fabulous program. It's all online. I will say you can go there to Scotland in person to graduate, which I did. And then at the same time, I got my master's of equestrian education online through William Woods as well. So kind of a double master's degree, not necessary, but as you'll learn this morning, I go a little over the top with my credentialing and education. And I came back to the US in 2014. I taught at Randolph College for a couple of years. I taught at Johnson & Wales for 6 years in their equine business management program. And then a position opened up here 2.5 years ago. One of the basically founding instructors here retired after 48 years. So
Wow.
I knew the positions weren't going to come open very often. So I jumped on it and came and taught for the first year and then stepped in as the dean a year and a half ago. So that's how I got back here. So it's a full circle.
Wow. Congratulations on that adventure.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Really took you all over the world, didn't it?
I should say, I tell my students all the time, there's horses all over the world. You never know. Anywhere you go, there's horses.
There you go. Yes. Well, and us horse people always seem to find them, right? No matter
We
where
do.
we are. So tell me about, before you even got on this whole, adventure professionally, you got your bachelor's in equine studies, right?
Mhm.
So what was your thought process looking back at younger you? Did you always think like I'm going to, I have these high aspirations for myself? Or were you like, I like horses, I think I'll pursue this bachelor's and then see what happens? What was your kind of thought process?
It's kind of funny because my mom will tell you from the age of 10, I knew I wanted to be a horse trainer. That was always going to be what I did. And I always wanted to own my own barn. That was my hope and dream. And and again, this was back in the 90s when there weren't very many colleges that offered equestrian studies. I think at the time there were only about 18 or 20. And I will credit my mother with a lot of this because it's also before internet, you guys. She was looking into every possible way that I could go to school for horses. The rest of the family thought, well, that's silly. What's going to be her backup plan? How's she going to make a living doing that? And she just really was like, no, this is fine. It's just going to be what she does for her life and we'll figure it out. And she and I toured colleges here and there and everywhere, mostly on the East Coast. I'm from Maryland originally. So we toured the East Coast at all the schools that were there at the time. Um, and yeah, there was a little bit of a waffle towards the end of my high school years because I did get that little flutter of doubt, can I make a living with this? Um, but seeing my mentors growing up, they were making a living doing this and they loved what they were doing. So that was a really big push for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so many times people kind of have that same thought process. It's like I love horses. This is my life. This is what I want to do with it. But how am I going to make a living, right? Because
Mhm.
that's kind of a what do I want to say? Like a myth, I guess, a little bit. Like
Yeah.
when in the equine industry, like kind of you said, your family was like, what? How is she gonna make a
Yeah.
living, right? And so that's why I think that it's so important to have people like you on the podcast to share your stories because there are more than a million ways to get involved with horses that are that you can make a really good living and really, really enjoy your job. And I think that that is something that we are really working towards right now in the EAS industry is how do we help our instructors discover that as their career and how do we make that sustainable for them for their lifelong career to really support them. So
Mhm.
um talk to me about so you are an advanced instructor
Mhm.
through Path International, correct?
Right.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about your like how did you find therapeutic riding in that whole area?
I'll say it started way back. When I was in Omaha, I was teaching at a place called Ponca Hills Farm there, and uh, Take Flight Farms, which is still an organization that's wonderful. They were just starting out at the time,
Yeah.
so I was one of the instructors for their pilot program, and that was more. Um, we didn't really have a direction then. It's changed a lot since then. But I got to do quite a bit with disadvantaged kids, working with some equine-assisted psychotherapy things. So that was my introduction to it. And then I didn't really get to, I'll say, play in that sector very much until I got into higher education. So when I was working at Johnson and Wales, one of the things they asked when they were um, interviewing me to work there is would I be interested in starting a minor there in equine assisted services because this was something that they thought could really help bolster the program, and it was correct. So in order to do that, in order to teach the classes and have that path organization, you have to be a path certified instructor. So I will say that the school helped me through that. I went through my training at High Hopes Therapeutic Center in Connecticut, did their whole um, I'm forgetting the acronyms now. Their instructor certification program. I went through that, and then I became a certified therapeutic riding instructor, registered at the time, within about a year. And then they hired me on to teach there part time, so I could get my additional hours to become an advanced.
Right.
And so I worked there every Friday night and every day, all day Saturday for I think about a year, and did teaching through the summer and not a burden at all. I say that because it was a long drive from where I lived, but I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And then to become the advanced therapeutic riding instructor, really, I'll say once I sort of realized I'm just teaching riding, right? I'm just teaching riding, and I stopped letting everything else get in my way. The advanced wasn't I can't say it wasn't terribly difficult, but it was a little easier for me than the register because I knew what to expect and I had a lot more experience teaching people with different disabilities.
Right. So how long have you been a certified or excuse me, advanced instructor with Path?
I was trying to think of that before we came on here. That would have been probably 2018-ish.
Okay.
I
Somewhere
think
somewhere in there.
2018. Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. So there aren't a ton of advanced instructors, correct? I mean,
Mhm.
it is a pretty rigorous process to get through. You have to log the hours and do all of
Mhm.
that. Do you want to share just a little bit about what that process looked for you then? I'm not sure if it's changed since then, but kind of what that expectation was for you.
Right. And things have changed. So I got my registered just before all the changes started happening with
Yeah.
credentialing. And I don't know what the new advanced credentialing system is, but it was an additional 125 hours of teaching.
Mhm.
And again, I was really fortunate to get a job right where I trained. And that was key to it. So I think, if you've got people looking to become certified, if they can find a job that's willing to help them with that part, because it is costly and it's time consuming, right? I think
Mhm.
those are the kind of the biggest barriers. I have students now I'm trying to help through their process. But if they can find a summer internship or summer job that allows them to get those teaching hours, those mentor teaching hours, that's that first step. And then getting hired on just was a boon because it was part-time. I could still do my full-time job at the university and um, just accumulate those hours. And I would just, sign up for anything. If somebody who needs to call out sick, call Erin, she'll come and teach. And
Mhm.
so it was accumulating the hours and then the studying part of it, because I started to teach it. When I was teaching it to my students, that really actually helped me to study what I need to study for the advanced test.
Mhm.
And then the actual certification process was stressful, right? It was stressful as a place I didn't know, horses I didn't know, people I didn't know. What got me through it was just the years of experience of teaching in general. Um, that I just again had to just go in that arena and just forget that people were assessing me and just teach
Right.
what I knew to do. And that just takes a lot of confidence. And for people just starting out, you just have to teach, go do it and get the experience. And the more you teach, the better you become as an instructor, as a rider, everything.
Hmm. So I like what you said about being able to find somewhere that you can train and get mentorship hours and then like for you, that turned ultimately into your part-time gig, right? And
Mhm.
so there's kind of this whole thought process behind like, how are we in EAS finding therapeutic riding as an instructor, whatever certification you go through, but
Mhm.
is it homegrown? Are you a homegrown instructor where you're cultivating your own people to train and then hire? Or is it more, like you go somewhere to receive the mentorship and then seek another position or go to higher education, right? Where you go
Mhm.
through a rigorous, standardized training process and then find a job like you would for any other type of major, that type of thing. Could you talk a little bit about sort of I guess, your feelings or your thought processes on those three types of things?
Sure. And, I think it's the horse industry in general. There's a lot of different ways, and nobody's going to have the same journey. And I think that's important for people to understand that just because this is how it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to be either, a viable way for you to go through it. There might not be places around. Um, it really depends on a lot of factors, right? The means that you have, the availability you have, reaching out. So I have students here who wanted to get into their mentor teaching hours, and really I helped them just reach out to places that were within driving distance of their house. So we start there. So if you want to start at that level, that's a great level to start because you start to get into the industry right away. You're making contacts immediately. And even if you go to a place and get your mentor teaching hours and that's not where you want to teach, they'll know somebody else, somewhere else that will be looking. Every
Mhm.
day I see jobs postings for certified therapeutic instructors. And I feel like there's a shortage because it's a process to get through. And again, if you go to a center that has a training program, like if you have the means for that, if you get a sponsorship or a scholarship or a grant to go through that, it's great. But again, can you take the time off? So what I see a lot in those certifications is either very young people who are starting out who have not really established themselves yet, they don't have any ties, or it's people sort of more towards the end of their career where they can take that time off. And so I feel like if you don't know right away what you want to do, there's still some options. So going to the universities, they've got the structured programs. St. Andrews and Centenary, two really well-known ones that have you can be certified as you come out of there. Those are great too. And for those students at the universities like that, it's part of the program. And so they're already there. They're doing the studies that works for them. Not to say that you couldn't go back as a non-traditional student, who's not 18 to 22. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that all those avenues, it's great that we have those three, just depending on what works for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that that's something that our industry has as a pro and also a little bit as a challenge is that it's a very flexible industry. Anybody can get into it at any time, no matter what stage of life you're in and how that might impact you as far as getting your training and all that. But it also creates, I think, like you said, there's a little bit of a barrier because of just the lack almost of not
Mm-hmm.
standardization, that's not what I want to say, but there is so many ways that it's like there isn't one clear path that's like I want to be a therapeutic riding instructor, or I want to do
Right.
this is what I need to do, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that is a challenge. What do you think are other barriers to getting into our industry and really making it work for our students and our anybody at any age, but making it work for them as a career?
Um, one of the things I come across here quite a bit, and again, I work with, usually young adults who are trying to figure out their lives. Um, there needs to be a willingness to relocate. So if people really just want to stay close to home and they don't want to go venture very far, the options are going to be really limited. Um, again, I've been fortunate that I can just go where the jobs are, right? I didn't tie myself to one place or one thing. And so I think one of the barriers really that I've seen is people just afraid to go to a different state. You don't have to go out of the country. Although I will take this moment to kind of plug that, other countries have their own riding instructors or for disabilities certifications and qualifications as well,
Hmm.
that are just as rigorous, just as time consuming, but they're required to teach in those places. But yeah, that barrier of not willing to travel, or they do want to travel, but in the horse world, we're so used to having housing provided, right? And so
Hmm.
a couple of my students in the past few years they really wanted this job at this place, but it didn't provide housing and they couldn't afford the housing there. So I think those are a couple of the barriers that are interesting that maybe people don't think about when they're looking for those jobs.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think that willingness to relocate piece is a huge part of it. And I mean, here in Omaha or in Nebraska, where Petra is located, there's only just a few of us really
Mhm.
within, quite a few miles. It's like a EAS center kind of desert right now. And so it's hard to find jobs. And so being
Mhm.
able to be flexible with that is really important for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about William Woods and what you guys are offering and kind of what you do within the school. I'm sure as
Mhm.
the dean, you don't wear your CTRI hat a super ton, but I hope you still find time to do that.
I'll say when I moved here, I was still working on my doctorate. So for the first 2 years here, I had to focus on that. My hope is now to find a couple of places or a place to go and be able to teach using that therapeutic instructor certification.
Hmm.
But what we do, excuse me, we actually have a minor here in equine-assisted services. So, and I'll say William Woods is unique in that we're not set up to actually offer riding or services to people with disabilities. However, our focus is on teaching our students to teach in that sector and to train the horses to be in that sector. So one of the big issues we've sort of identified is a lot of centers are short on horses, or that the horses at our centers are, um, you know, their careers in EAS tend to be short-lived, right? We understand they're more stressed. There's studies coming out that prove that they're more stressed than maybe horses in other environments. So our hope is, and this is sort of a new venture for us, but our hope is to be able to train our horses that have come through our program. We get horses donated to us for our program, and we love them. And sometimes, if they don't work out in my Western string, they'll go and be a dressage horse, or they'll be a fundamentals of riding horse. Last year, we had a couple horses who were up for retirement because they can't really do this job anymore, but we use them in our equine assisted services course. And those students learn to train the horses for the different mounts, the dismounts. They learn to train the horse for leaders and sidewalkers and all the things that you would assess a horse for at a
Hmm.
center. And our hope is that we can get some horses available to centers to then be able to send out. We're looking into grants right now that would cover, the cost of shipping a horse to a center. So, say there's a center in Rhode Island that's looking for a horse. If we have one that fits the bill, hopefully we can find a grant that would cover the cost of shipping, then that expenses it on either one of the nonprofits. So our focus really is on teaching the students to be in the industry. We do have a few students right now who are going through their CTRI certification process. So they can get the education component from us, get all their checklist things done here at the university, and then we help set them up with local centers or centers at their home if they're going home for the summer to get their volunteer hours and mentor teaching hours.
Incredible. I love that because that's sort of answering two questions for our industry, like the horse, the whole equine welfare, EAS horse debacle shortage, and
Yeah.
helping instructors find, and helping professionals, equestrian professionals find EAS, which I think is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say students in your program, are those mostly what types of majors are you talking about? You guys have a pretty robust like riding equestrian team and things out there too, right? Can you explain that a
So
little bit?
I can, yes. So we have 3 different degrees: equestrian science, which is the one I have, geared towards people, and this isn't set in stone, but geared towards people who want to be teachers, trainers, instructors. We have equine administration for people that want to sort of be on the more business side of the horse world, and then equine general studies, which kind of covers everything else because there's a lot of everything else. Within that, we have the concentrations in equine media and equine-assisted services. We have hunter jumper, Western saddle seat, and dressage. So that's one of the things that makes us unique among the universities, is that we offer 4 different disciplines, and the students can ride any of them. They come in as I'm a hunter jumper, but then they may ride Western one semester and go, wow, that was really cool. If they're equestrian science, they're required to ride 3 of those 4 disciplines just to become a more well-rounded horse person in general, and to be, more employable when they leave. We don't compete intercollegiately. Our students, instead, the focus has always been academic and bringing the students along to take the horses to shows, to be able to go to rated shows if they want to. And students don't have to compete, but if they want to compete, they can. They take university-owned horses, which, again, are all donated. Some of our horses are already show quality, so the students can kind of step right into the show ring and get a really good experience that way. And some of the horses, the students have a chance to bring along. We've got some green horses, some young horses the students can bring along. I don't know, spoilers here. We have an article coming out soon. We have a horse that was donated a couple of years ago that was a rescue horse that went to a pretty big show and came back world champion. So those are the kind of experience our students get to have. We really are trying to put future professionals in the industry sort of, boots on the ground as soon as they graduate with enough experience to get started.
Wow, that's incredible. The way that you guys are integrating education and how to do these things, but also, like you said, the boots on the ground part, where it's like you get to see the fruits of your labor, and be immersed in the industry before you really get there, or you graduate or whatever. And being able to feel out all those different opportunities is really unique.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons I came here was because of that, and I could get in front of future employers while I was in school. I could get in front of potential clients. A lot of our students get job offers while they're at these shows, and it's not just our students who are showing. We have students who will go and groom or go and be support crew of some type, and people see their work ethic. They see how well they're working with the horses. We put horse welfare and well-being at the top of our priority. Everybody here. So I think that really shines through with our students.
Mm-hmm. How do you guys, I'm just curious now, because we were kind of talking a little bit about equine welfare, and that's something that's a really big topic right now in our industry as a whole, is just preventing equine burnout, because EAS is a very stressful environment for horses.
Right.
And we put that care and their priorities at the top of our list. But at the end of the day, it is just, carrying unbalanced riders or riders that have a lot of emotional conflict or physical conflict, that kind of thing is really difficult for our horses. How are you managing that with students that are, young and coming up in this industry? And I guess, what are your kind of thoughts on that and helping to advocate for our horses in all fields, but EAS especially?
And so I'm teaching a class starting in January 13th. And so I teach a survey of Equine-Assisted Services class. And one of the units we talk about is horse welfare, horse well-being, and really to help them recognize the signs of the horse that is distressed or stressed or unhappy. The obvious signs, right? If they're acting out physically or, being quote unquote naughty, we do explain to those students there's no such thing as a naughty horse. They're expressing themselves. And it's interesting when I talk about behaviors with horses, how well that actually goes in hand with behaviors with people and
Mhm.
how you can sort of relate the two, right?
Yes.
Acting out usually is just trying to express something that people are not understanding.
It's just
And
communication, right?
it's communication. Might not be the way that you would prefer it, but that's how it's happening. Um, so the big thing there is trying to teach the students about what signals the horse is giving to you that they're doing well, that they're happy, or that they're not. And again, I pull sort of the new science into it. I'll say the new, right? It's the last 10, 15 years, but it's still new science showing that here are ways that we can tell if a horse is distressed, right? You can go really far into that, but if you get into the basic, look at the horse's facial expressions, their body language, their stance. A lot of horses, as we know, will tolerate a lot of things, but they're giving you some subtle clues and hints that maybe this isn't what their favorite thing to do is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, two, for the well-being and welfare of the horse, really encouraging people to find what that horse wants to do, right? And that's anthropomorphizing a little bit, but if the horse is not happy doing the leading lessons and it's always trying to bite the leader, maybe try something else. Maybe that horse gets used for independent lessons only, or that horse gets used for something that there's not a human in their space at the front. Rather than pushing that horse or correcting that horse or training that horse to let somebody in their space, which you should, right? The horses do need to have that respect. But if the horse just keeps doing that, and I say this from personal experience, as a horse that just really is always trying to bite the leader, rather than try to manage that, maybe try something different, right? Let that horse go do trail rides for a month. Let it go do something else and have that break. Because the burnout, it's really an interesting thing that I didn't notice until I started teaching in EAS. The 100 jumper horses, here's your job. We do this, we do that. We give them time off. We're still really cognizant of the horses, but their job is a little more performance based than the EAS horses. And so for the EAS horses, I think there are plenty of jobs they can do. So maybe this horse just wants to be groomed. Cool. We can do that as an EAP, an EAL, right? Every horse can do something. But as soon as you start to figure out that horse is not enjoying his job or her job, it's time to think about what you can do for that horse. And it might just be some time off, right?
Come join us in Gretna, Nebraska for a hands-on EAS workshop March 13th through the 15th in 2025. As the EAS industry continues to expand and diversify, it is of utmost importance to keep the needs of our equine partners a priority. At our workshop, get a comprehensive look at all the aspects of successful equine welfare, including appropriate equine selection, proper training, conditioning, and integration into programming, learn how to do practical saddle fit for EAS, set weight limits for your horses, and so much more. Equine welfare strategies are hard to learn while sitting in a desk at a regular conference. We believe in the power of hands-on practice with equine skills in a collaborative environment where we can learn from each other. Attendees should expect a combination of valuable hands-on experience with our horses, classroom-based education, and individualized coaching to help solidify the workshop content. Get the entire 2.5 days of content for just $125 with our early bird registration discount available till January 1st. Discounts are available for audit-only positions as well as scholarship opportunities. If you're a member of our exclusive club at Patreon, make sure to use your additional $25 discount code. To register and get all the details, head over to hetrauniversity.org or click the link in the show notes below. We hope to see you in Gretna this March. Yes, that I could just hang up the phone right now and just be in, but that is so true. And we really, really try to do that at Hetra is, it's a two-way conversation, right? So we expect a certain amount of something out of our horses, but we're also listening on the other end of that line. Like if you don't particularly love sidewalkers, you don't particularly love the thigh hold, whatever it is, how can we get you into lessons where maybe you have a little bit more of that balance, or what does make those horses a little bit more happy? And that is a huge part of it, but you have to be able to see those signs, notice them. And, the first part of that whole conversation has to happen first, right? Where we're noticing that behavior. And so I love that you guys are training the instructors in your program to be aware of those things, because I think that's something that's missing a little bit in our, not necessarily in our homegrown instructors, because whoever you are, going through is going to teach you the way that they do that in their center, right? So the way they recognize signs of burnout or whatever their process is. But just picking up some mentoring hours and trying to put something together, you kind of miss that the well-rounded sort of education piece of it, where you might not learn those things until you're on the job and it's too late or something happens. And I hate for people to have to learn that way, but unfortunately a lot of us do. So being able to be on the front side of that, getting that education is really important.
And, and I find a lot of the homegrown instructors have good instincts, right? They're horse people, they have good instincts, but yeah, maybe there's some things that if they just take a step back and I say, read the papers and watch and yeah, talk to some more experienced people. I think the mentorship aspect of our industry could be stronger. I don't know how, but I think that, I mean, having good mentors is really the best way to get into the industry and comfortable with it and going forward with it.
Yes, I completely agree. I think that, it's hard to say that you could standardize it or you could make everybody's experience the same, because that's what makes our industry beautiful, is that not everybody's experience is the same. But how do we get that critical information in there where it needs to go, so that we can stay safe and sustainable as an industry as a whole? Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been so much fun. I don't want to keep you forever, Erin, but do you have any advice for anybody who is, wanting to get either into the EAS field or into the equestrian field as a whole? Any advice for those folks looking to get into it, but, either struggling to know where to start or just, get plugged in?
It's hard because I've actually just recently gotten on a whole bunch of social media forums for jobs and internships to help my students find those positions. And there's a whole bunch of jobs and internships posted out there, but then there's a whole bunch of people also posting they're looking for jobs and internships. And I'm like, why aren't you two talking? We're on the same forum here. What I would say, any part of the industry, but particularly EAS, if you can just find a place to go volunteer first. Right. And that actually, I volunteered for a year before I started my training, because I probably could have jumped right into the training, but I was like, I don't know anything about this world. I know about horses. I know about riding. I don't really know about the EAS part. So I volunteered for a year, as everything, sidewalker, barn help, whatever. Just jump in, dive in would be my suggestion, but volunteer, get to know the people, the horses, get to understand the feeling, because sometimes the struggles people have with EAS is being around with people with disabilities if they're not used to that. And that sometimes can be a thing to get over. And I say that because it wasn't that way for me, but I've seen other people struggle with that. So volunteering gets you in the environment right away, and then start talking to the people who are there, right? How did they get through? Do they have some contacts? It's really a lot about networking in our industry in general, right? It is what you know, but it's who you know. So I have a student, I'll have to plug this right now because I have two students that were looking for jobs and internships. One was last summer and she came to me and asked for one. I set her up with one. Well, it fell through at the last minute through nobody's fault. And she came to my office crying, oh, she lost the job. She lost the job. I said, you didn't lose the job. You never had it. I said, but let me make a phone call. And so I called a former student of mine, who was out in the industry working. And I said, hey, are you guys looking for any interns or anything right now? And she said, actually, as a matter of fact, our intern is leaving. So we do need an intern. So that student got a job last summer just because I made a phone call. We have a student right now, and I say this because I want people to know that these opportunities exist. Actually, same student. There's an opportunity that came up this summer presented to me, that there's an internship available in Zimbabwe, of all places. And there's a healing with horses in Zimbabwe, and it's the only PATH accredited instructor in Zimbabwe. And they're looking for interns. And the student came back from the summer and I said, hey, you seem adventurous. What do you think about going and doing this? And man, she jumped on it. She's there right now. She's finishing up a 4-week internship over the winter break, and just getting experience, again, being in that environment. That's an extreme case of it. But get in the environments, get yourself in there. Don't be afraid to say yes, right? Take some risks, move to that place. Everything can be temporary. The benefit of being in college, I'll say, is you have every summer, you've got 3 months to try something out. And if you don't like it, you can say thank you very much and try something else. That's the benefit really of being in a college program. But yeah, get right in there, volunteer, find out how people got their jobs, and just, yeah, don't be afraid to speak up and ask, right?
For sure. Just get plugged in, right? It's like, even like you said, like on Facebook or, anywhere there's, pages and groups and forums and, things that just poke around and you never know
Mm-hmm.
what you're going to find, and or go to look up some industry things or go to a conference or just go, experience it a little bit and meet some folks. And I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is about what you know, but it is sometimes about who you know.
Well, and if people go to the Equine Fair that's in Ohio or Massachusetts, or Midwest Horse Fair in Madison, there's always booths there. There's path booths. CHA has an Instructor for Riders with Disabilities certification. There are centers that are set up there. So, yep, just go. I mean, put yourself out there is the biggest part.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I do want to rewind just really quick because
Mhm.
this is my soapbox that I stand on a lot. But how do you prepare your instructors in your minor program at William Woods for um, helping them prepare to instruct those with disabilities? So I think that is a piece that
Yep.
is missing for me in a
Mhm.
lot of the regular or the other certification programs that are happening.
Mhm. But it's first the education component of it, teaching what the different disabilities are, what they might look like, how they might present, of course, the precautions and contraindications. They have to know that stuff. But one of the big things I'm going to try to do this semester when I teach this class is take some more field trips and go to more centers where they can actually watch and see those presentations in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I do is I do show some film, some videos. There's a great comedian who's a little sweary, but who has autism, and I said this is a great way to kind of listen from somebody who has that perspective, right, and to learn from them. So as much as I can bring people into the fold who have these disabilities to talk to the students or to show yes, I have MS, but I can do these things.
Mm-hmm.
So that they're not going into it and just sort of having a shocked look on their face. But that's where the volunteer hours, I think, really helps too, because it allows you to just go be a leader and be in that environment, and I guess get comfortable with it if you're not comfortable with it, because it's a little bit of it's a difficult step for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially those that have a lot of equestrian experience, in writing or, advanced areas of show or, any of that kind of stuff is you can teach able-bodied riders how to do the things that you know how to do, but their body might feel different, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they're dealing with some type of a disability, and so we don't know how they feel, right? So
Right.
how do you learn more about that? And I think you're right. I think volunteering and being in that environment is a really great way to just experience and learn from those who do experience those things, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Well, thank you, Erin. This has been fantastic. If anybody wants to learn more about William Woods and their programs, or how to reach you there at your program, where can they find you?
Well, we have a website. It's williamwoods.edu/EQS. We are most active on our social media pages. So Facebook, there's a William Woods University Equestrian Studies page. You'll see all of our fun things there. My email is erin.cardea@williamwoods.edu. So if anybody wants to reach out, has any questions, or has interns they need, they can reach they can reach out, because we've got students who are starting to look for that this year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing your experience, Erin. I think it's really important to talk to, like I said, different equestrians in the field doing different things. And like you said, the possibilities are endless because there's horses everywhere.
They're all around the world.
All right. Well, don't be a stranger, Erin. I'm sure our paths will cross down the road.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me on.
That's all for today. But until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska. Hetra University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to the EAS community. Check out all the Hetra University has to offer at www.hetrauniversity.org.